Okay, so now that we've discussed, beginnings, let's head over back to the English side. Let's talk about "We Will Meet Again." I have some things I want to say, both about the style, but also the lyrics and a few other things. First of all, it isn't definitely not super similar to the Japanese song. They are the mood is kind of similar. And from a stylistic perspective, I would say it actually bears somewhat of resemblance to the Styx song, Come Sail Away. Now, if you don't remember, Styx is STYX. Maybe I have some sort of weird affinity for bands with four-letter names that are misspelled versions of words. I don't know. In any case, you may recall that Come Sail Away sort of has these self-harmonized vocals, and I think this song is kind of similar. The melodies are totally different, so it's not like Soul Heart where there's a passage that sounds kind of similar to another song. This time they do seem different, but it's almost as if someone did a original tribute song in certain ways. Did you get, thinking back on it, did any of that strike you, Anne?
Yeah, more so lately. Like, at the time of its release, like, I was really into this song, mostly because of some stuff that was going down in Pokemon at the time. But like I really loved it a lot, and over the years I've kind of started to realize it's got some cliches in it that like are kind of along the lines of Come Sail Away and like some of those older classic rock type groups, and I both love it and kind of laugh at it, but it definitely kind of harkens back to those type of bands.
Yeah, it took me after I heard of it. By the way, admission. Today was actually the first time I had watched this movie. I'd heard the ending theme song many times because I just listened to it, but this is my first time seeing the 8th Pokemon movie was today for this discussion, believe it or not. But I did want to mention we go on to the lyrics. It does mention some things. The setting of the movie is supposed to be very Middle Ages, which it always strikes me as kind of funny how that's romanticized. It really wasn't that great of a history, or time period in human history for average, everyday people. It's fun to dress up as, sort of, but not a great place to live. But it does mention, like, I forget the exact words, but fit for a king, and then it sort of goes through all that stuff. Do you think the lyrics call out some of the stuff from the movie pretty well?
They do. Some of them explicitly, like, it opens up with, like a mountain I must conquer, and stuff like that. And then there's also a lot of more general things to the series, and I kind of feel that the song was created with dual purpose, but we can talk about that maybe a bit later. But like there's definitely a lot of stuff like we are bound together by fate and nothing can stop this journey. Like there's just a lot of very Pokemon tropes in it, and again a few specific references to things in the movie, or at least that could be specific references. It's a bit more vague in this particular song than some of the ones in the past.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned some of the stuff going down. We should definitely mention this is the last 4Kids dubbed movie. After this, there's that huge thing. I have mentioned before, I'm not quite as bothered by it. It is still going to be a little difficult to work through that again when we do the next movie or so.
Yeah.
But you said dual purpose. What were you kind of implying there?
It feels a little bit like a tribute song. And kind of like you were saying, it felt almost like a tribute to Styx or something like that. In a way, something about this, especially like at the time when I first watched the movie and first bought the DVD and first heard this song, like there was some crying that went on in my young college life. And for years and years and years after I heard it, I have very vivid memories of the years following that 4Kids dub change of like listening to this song and just feeling nostalgic and feeling sad because, I had grown to love these characters as they were portrayed by the 4Kids team. And again, even if you're not bothered by the voice actor switch and the script writer switch and everything, it is still a thing that happened, and it is still a different portrayal of Pokemon and the Pokemon characters, and that changed whether or not you can grow to love the new team is still a change. And this feels kind of like it was a bit of a tribute or like a last hurrah for the 8 years that came before.
Yeah, I don't know if when they got to start producing the music, the original English music for this
Yeah,
movie.
it may not necessarily have been meant that way, but it definitely lyrically plays out that way. Like a lot of groups that were kind of like trying to kind of petition to get the old voice actors back kind of rallied around this song because it just kind of feels like a song that is calling out to everything that came before, and we're going to go forward with joy, and side by side we will ride once again if we keep the flame alive. Like, it's just got a lot of that feel to it. So like, even though now that it's over and done with and we've grown to love our new cast and everything, like, it still kind of calls up those feelings of like, this was a good end point, I guess. Like, it wasn't like the last thing. I don't know if it was necessarily the last thing ever recorded by Four Kids, but it was towards the end, and this song kind of feels like it put a nice little button on it that, gave me emotional feels.
Well, I didn't watch this movie. I owned it on DVD. I got it when it came out, but I didn't watch it back then. And of course, if you bought the original English DVD for this, it was bundled with the mini movie or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
with the new voice actors. And
A little disconcerting, but we're over it now, I guess.
I suppose I don't know if it was that great an idea to package the two in one thing there to invite the obvious, well, very obvious comparison, but to make it even more obvious. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe they were hoping to like lessen the continuity blow. Like, we're still going. We're still together. I don't know.
Yeah, it also switched networks around that time, and things like that. But yeah, I think this is one of the songs, the Pokemon songs, you can say legitimately is to a degree intertwined with the history of the franchise and the fandom, not just this one movie. And maybe that gives it more of an, pardon the term, aura around it than than it might have otherwise gotten.
Yeah, whether it wants to be, like, whether that was the intention or not, like, definitely a lot of fans who were still active in the Pokemon fandom at this time, this is one of the songs that they kind of gravitated to. Maybe fans who, like, kind of stopped watching over Johto and Hoenn, like, it's not on their radar, but for a lot of the ones who kept watching, like, this is a song that's kind of high up there on the list, just because of its emotional impact of, like, this is the end, and this is and that probably would have happened no matter what song we got, but since it kind of has that feeling of like Styx and Journey and like emotional power ballad kind of thing.
Yeah, like I said, it's hard to say exactly. Obviously, for the folks at Four Kids, we're not going to get into the whole thing because there's a fair bit of disputed history. I'd say it was less, well, the fans took it harder than when, like, Wizards of the Coast lost the license to the trading card game. But I don't think Four Kids and Pokemon ended up suing each other like Wizards of the Coast and the Pokemon Company did. So I suppose it depends on the yardstick.
Yeah, there's a lot of narratives bouncing around, and I don't think we'll ever actually know completely all the ins and outs of what happened in that situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, since you have a different perspective on this song than I do, because I'm a total sap, and like I said, I was crying for like 5 years after this happened. Like, what's more of your perspective on the song and how it relates to Pokemon? And like, you've talked a bit about it, I guess, but
I like it. I mean, I think it's a good song. And like I said, I mean, I had heard the song beforehand because I did, even though I've never watched the movie straight through, I did listen to the end credits just so I could keep up on it a while back. And I knew folks did like it. And it had sort of that cachet with it. But just as a song, I'd say it's pretty good. It's certainly, compared to, like I said, we talked about with movie 7, this relates to the movie a little bit better with the setting. And I think it does an overall good job there. Like I said, I don't have the deep emotional connection. I wasn't particularly fighting for, well, maybe a little more for the new voice actors, sort of, but I sort of accepted it for what it was, that it was going to be rough. I mean, to be honest, if you go back to like the first 5 or 10 episodes of the TV show, even under the original cast, they were still sorting some things out.
Yeah, some changes there as well.
And part of that because, that was the beginning of the TV series, so were dubbing episodes when it was originally made in Japan, and they were sorting things out there too. But so I knew it would be an adjustment period. And like I said in our In Excess episode, I had just been through Rockstar In Excess. So changing voices was something I had sort of gotten used to. It was still an adjustment. They didn't have the long break like In Excess had. But so this song does not have that sort of, we're fighting to sort of, even if maybe we can't get everyone, but we can get some of them to continue to work on it or whatever. But
yeah, or at least that feeling of celebrating what you had, maybe.
Yeah. I had mentioned a few episodes ago that I wanted to show that we could sort of talk about controversial topics, and this is sort of one of them.
Yeah, the fandom's a little bit divided on this. Just a little.
There still are there. I do hope that some of you folks out there can at least learn to live with the new arrangement.
Because you have no choice. It happened.
It happened, and even if they wanted to go back to the old voice cast, one of them is no longer with us, one of the primary voice actors. Yeah. So they don't have that option anymore.
And I've been thinking lately, even if we were able to do that, like one of the reasons the change affected me so much is, like I said, I was in love with how they were portrayed and how the individual actors acted these characters. And with so much time having passed, a lot of events have happened in the Pokemon world. I'm not sure if we got Veronica Taylor back to voice Ash. Like, I'm sure it would still sound great, but I'm not sure she wouldn't have all the life experience that Sarah Notchenny has built up as Ash, She would be coming at Ash from the same place as she left, which is not where Ash is now. So I almost think like it's just one of those things we have to kind of accept as a thing that happened and there is no going back.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes wonder, going back to NXS, what's the alternate history if Michael Hutchins doesn't die? But
that might be a different world.
Yeah, so I don't want to go too far deep in this. We could certainly do a whole episode about the switch and sort of the progression from when the new actor started to where we have now, which I think is sort of an in-between those two things. But I did want to mention it here because it does have that life outside of just this movie, which I guess aside from maybe the power of one, you can't say for a lot of these ending themes, but this one you can.
Yeah, it had some impact beyond just the movie it was in.
Okay, well, I think we're ready to move on to the part where we decide which of these we like more. I think I have a hard time deciding on this one. It is quite possible, I think, that this is one of the movies where they could have, especially with Puffy Amiyumi being at least somewhat known in the U.S., they could have done an English version. But as it stands, we do have two different songs.
Yeah, do you remember when this movie released? I'm trying to look up a date on here.
Well, it would have come out in Japan in 2005.
Yeah, so Puffy would have already been established in the US and kind of still riding a pretty high wave. They almost, I don't know if they would have wanted to do this necessarily, but I think they could have gotten away with even keeping the song and just advertising it. And just trying to push that and gotten like the cartoon scene and the anime scene, because a lot of people who would have been watching and buying Pokemon would have overlapped with the audience that was with Teen Titans.
Yeah, I think it's certainly, like I said, the hard part would have been any contractual stuff They would have had to work on. I mean, they were able to work out the song to be on their English released album, which, like we said, you used to be able to get on iTunes.
Well, they can work out the rights for that because Puffy Amiyumi owns the song. Like it's contracted out of house. Like the song doesn't belong to Pokemon exclusively unless it belongs to Puffy Amiyumi.
Interesting. They retain some rights to it. That isn't always the case though, because sometimes
it's not the case with every artist, but again, a lot of these ones that were contracted out of house, like the way it works with the drama tie-ins and the anime tie-ins is the band or the production company rather retains the rights to the master recording and they can use it for whatever they want. And it's kind of negotiated between the franchise that the song was a tie-in for, how that song can be used.
It's also possible, I was just thinking that maybe they could have cleared it for America, but maybe clearing it for the rest of Europe or other countries where Pokemon was being produced would have been too difficult.
That's possible, yeah.
That like they could justify America. I don't remember if their album was released totally worldwide or just in a few countries or what. Because obviously America is a big slice of the pie if you're going to do for the dub of a movie. But if you have to do it in individual contracts for each country in like Europe or South America, that gets pretty hairy. So we don't know if it was possible. Obviously, of all the artists who have done something for a Pokemon movie in Japan, Puffy Amiyumi is definitely one of the most well-known outside of Japan. Not counting one we'll get to in a couple movies, I suppose. But, given the fact that they did replace the song, I think they're about equal, but they're different enough. I'm glad we have both. I did kind of want to mention, and we'll get into this a little bit when we talk about the score, neither of these songs, in terms of mood, I think really fits the movie that greatly. I think, especially the way the movie ends, kind of tragically, but also with a proper resolution, seems kind of, overly energetic to have an ending theme.
Hajimari no Uta is jarring. I think we talked, Forever Ago on Think Movie 5 about how that one song...
You're Not Alone.
Right, yeah, where it comes in with that... Was it an accordion or something? Like, it's just really loud after a very soft moment where the movie was almost silent. Like, Hajimari no Uta is kind of that same thing, where it's just so loud and high energy and fun of a song right after... Like, we just talked about someone dying. And We Will Meet Again is, I feel, not so much of a 180 mood switch, but it's still a bit of a departure from,
Absolutely.
that emotional place we just were.
Yeah, because Lucario goes into this sort of, they don't use the word dead, I don't think, but it basically sacrifices itself to preserve the Tree of Origin, I think it's called. And, then we go from that straight into the end credits where we have this very upbeat song. It's, in a way, it's kind of the opposite of the You're Not Alone because we're going from a relatively positive ending in the movie 5 to sort of a tumultuous, somewhat dark song in the end credits.
Yeah.
Which is, like I said in that episode, makes me uncomfortable when I try to pair it with the movie. It kind of really doesn't sit too well. This one... maybe a little less jarring, but I would have really expected something much more like what we've seen with sort of the X and Y dub endings, and maybe to a lesser extent the Japanese ones, where it is something a little more reflective and stuff like that. And this seems more like something that you would hear at a movie where the ending is like, oh, everybody's fine, everything's good, we're all gonna go on our remaining adventures. Not, oh, geez, well, that was very brave of Lucario, and a very noble sacrifice.
Well, and not just Lucario, like, everybody in this movie died at one point.
Yeah, we don't know exactly what happens when they're pulled in by the Stone Mountain antibodies or whatever they are.
Right, death is in air quotes, but... So something traumatic happened to every single one of these characters. So
yeah, they kind of go to the cornfield or whatever, but
something happened. Something creepy happened. So yeah, it's just it feels like a cheat to say that they are both a tie for me, but you're right, they're very close in that they're both good songs and they're both not entirely meshing with the last scene.
Yeah, it's kind of like I was getting kind of flashbacks to like Harry Potter 4 Goblet of Fire, where I guess we're going to spoil other movies here too. One of Harry's friends gets killed in the final conflict, and the ending is kind of muted. They don't do a super happy song in the end credits in that one, but you kind of get the feeling that if they had, maybe we get something like this. It is a little bit jarring.
Yeah.
Do you think, I hate to put this out there kind of, do you think they're trying to make folks sort of move on and, I hate to say the word forget, about what kind of happened at the end of the movie there?
Well, you might not be wrong. Because, like this is a franchise that is targeted towards very, very young children. So it's like to have the movie go to that kind of dark place where it's like, yeah, they didn't use the word death, but it's kind of heavily implied that something death-like happened. It is interesting, but I feel like as a company, they probably feel like they got to come right back as soon as they can. So I feel like this might be a way that the company feels that they can catch themselves, to have a happy song to kind of play under the end credits as the kids are kind of like watching the credits, and maybe their parents are ushering them out of the theater so that they're kind of happy again. Having a happy song playing while, Ash and Brock and May and Max are all getting on with their journeys and everything. Like that's a possible consideration. The other one is, given that it was contracted out of house, like the song Hajime no Uta seems to have more of a tie to Pokemon than some of the past ones, and We Will Meet Again was probably made for the movie as well. But they may not have necessarily been made knowing exactly where the end theme ends, or having deep discussions about that with the filmmakers and the directors. So it's also entirely possible that it's kind of coincidence. Like Puffy was like, oh, we're making a Pokemon song. It's got to be Genki, and we're going to have fun and about friendship. And maybe they had a few notes about what the movie would be about, but ultimately they made something happy. And the same with We Will Meet Again. It's like, we're making a song for a Pokemon movie, and it's like when they actually kind of put it together, it's like, oh, the movie actually ends on kind of a dark note.
I suppose. I mean, We Will Meet Again, I suppose you can sort of apply that to Lucario and Aaron.
Yeah, like there is kind of, as I've said, like I kind of project a lot onto the song because of my emotional feelings at the time, but there is a bit of a sense of finality to the lyrics of We Will Meet Again, and a feeling of like, we are separated and I have to find you. I have to search for you over every mountain. Like I have to fight for your honor, and we will meet again. It kind of implies there's been a separation, which like fits the movie. It fits what happens to Lucario at the end. So there's a lot of ways it does relate, and it could be that they develop, like it's a little more surprising for the English side because I think they would have had the movie by then in their
right.
Like whereas with the Japanese, I can see Puppy Yami Yumi like having developed the song without actually seeing the ending. But yeah, it could be that they just developed it along those themes on both sides without really considering the exact final scene. But it's hard to tell. Like I said, it's also equally valid. They might have just wanted something a little more positive so that, small children didn't go home crying. They weren't quite brave enough to pull a Ghibli or something.
Perhaps not. Keep listening for more from this interview